Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Dan Banchero Show, only on YouTube. I'm your host, and still a major league piece of work, Dan Banchero. I arrived here at Tahoe Vista around noon today, and had a lovely time walking out in the sunshine on the beach, and got up in the hills for a little bit, and I had a good time. But the wind picked up this afternoon about 4 o'clock, and it was time for me to come inside my little cottage that I rented for the evening. And I've been doing a lot of writing and thinking the last couple of days, and I was able to put together the final portion of 2015. Coincidentally, last week I was at First Chance dropping off and picking up a friend of mine. And coincidentally, I saw my buddy and former counselor from Project 90, Mike McCormick, and he had stated things have changed quite a bit for me since he met me, and he knew I was going to get it sooner or later. He said that the entire county was proud of me, which was quite a statement and very flattering, and it meant a lot to me because I thought that maybe my close circle within like Redwood City and San Carlos were the only ones that kind of knew about what I was going through, but apparently the entire county knew at the time, and so it's cool. Yeah, and he had mentioned the AC/DC concert and the Psyche unit and that whole situation, and that just happens to be the part of 2015 that we're on right now. So just a little disclaimer. I'm doing this show with this denture in, right? Because I'm tired of walking around with that tooth missing. So it makes me speak a little bit funny, but I'm trying to get through it with it in because I'm self-conscious, just a little bit, and I'm tired of looking at it. So, yeah. So the show, 2015. I'm telling, we're back on the timeline after a couple months, and I have found that coming clean, it's a lot better in the long run to initiate it than to get found out. And this goes in all aspects of life. So people think I'm nuts about some of the stuff I talk about in my past and just put it out there for everybody to hear. But I feel better and I got nothing to hide. I know who my judge is and I know my intent. And this isn't a publicity stunt. This is just for my own wellness. And if it helps somebody else get somewhere they need to be or want to be, I'm not telling everybody to do a show like this, but don't knock until you try it. Hope you're all having a great weekend. You know, I was reading some scripture from Buddha this week, and speaking of all this stuff that I was talking about, and with the secret life and getting found out about things we don't want to expose to the light, Buddha said, 3 things cannot hide for long: the moon, the sun, and the truth. And that statement is very, very powerful to me. So I thought I wanted to share that with you because that's what I do. I take the wisdom of the ages that's helped me, and sometimes it takes a guy like me to expose it so other people can hear it, because as I've said, we are all each other's messengers, whether we like it or not. We all teach each other lessons on how we want to be treated and how we don't want to be treated, what kind of people we want to aspire to be, what we don't want to be. We're all on different paths on this journey of ours in life. So anyway, yeah, so it feels good to be able to make choices on my own rather than having doctors, lawyers, judges, police officers, counselors, and bosses make choices for me. 2015, so I basically walked out of my job after a couple of incidents. I was in the middle of discussing, when I was working at Warren's Hummus Shop, I was a manager, and I was waking up and I started drinking, and I go to work, and I had fear of internal bleeding, and I lost it. I left work once, and I did it a second time. This time, I just bailed on work again, and I couldn't work. I didn't deserve to work there. I felt bad. The staff was great. I had a lot of fun working with those young kids, trying to manage them. Even as a server, when I was demoted, just great people I worked with. And, I was working at Pachi's Pizza in Palo Alto at nighttime at the time as a server. And same thing, great management team. I had Chris and Cassie and others. I had some kids working with me as servers, and I was like the vet, like 10 to 15 years older than everybody else. I was working with a guy named Robert. He was a little bit mature like myself, and well, as far as age, but I don't know about how we act. But I think Rob watched this show, so I want to give him a shout out. Good to hear from him and bump into him every now and again. But my mind wasn't right. I was still distracted by what was wrong in my life, or what I perceived as a problem with the co-parenting situation. And so what happened was I was working nights at Pachi's, and then when I lost the Orange Hummus Shop job, I took advantage of a situation. The Rustic House in San Carlos was making its grand opening, and I got hired on as a server, and I worked nights, and I made great money, man. This little place, great food. It was small, and I'd been always used to working in these huge restaurants where I was like running around like crazy. There was a lot of walking involved, a lot of extra labor. And this little place, the tipping in San Carlos is great. The people are very generous, and I made a lot of money, and I had a lot of fun working for the owners. And eventually, my bad habits would catch up to me again. I don't know. I was one day. I remember I got off the train, and I walked down University, going into Pachi's. I had about a half an hour to go before I started work. And I walked into Pizza My Heart, and I think I would go for the Racer 5 or a Denogonizer or something. I can't remember, but I'd get pints there. And I started pounding, and I knew I was in trouble as soon as I started pounding them. And I went into work at Pachi's, and there was a series of incidents where I was like going upstairs to restock the beverage station, and I would stash some hard ciders in my apron. I'd go in the bathroom and pound them, and I'd be wasted, and I couldn't perform, and I was like trying to live this noble life. So it was like working at Red Robin again. I would ring in all the drinks that I took, right? So I wasn't stealing, but I was breaking the rules. I was drinking on the job. So I wasn't making a lot of money because all my tips were going to pay for these drinks. I mean, there'd only be like 6 or 7, which is not very average for a person to be working as a server on a shift and drinking 6 or 7 hard ciders. But I'd pound them, and I'd ring them in on a fake table, and I'd walk with very little money and tips. And eventually one day, I remember I had gone into the pizza parlor, Pizza My Heart. I had a couple pops, and I went into work one day, and I remember I started taking kids' cups right in front of everybody in the restaurant, and I started filling them up with beer from the tap, and hammering them down. So the time that I decided to do that, it was a Monday night, and I'm outside in the back eating a piece of pizza, basically taking a break, and my GM Chris, he comes out, and he wasn't even working, he was off, and he comes out there and he's like, "Hey, I just got a call from corporate, and they saw you drinking beer out of a kid's cup. I gotta send you home. I can't have you." Like he already knew what my issue was, because when I got hired on, if you do recall in previous episodes, I took some time off to go to P90, and I had a feeling it was bullshitting. I know there's a camera in the office, so one of the managers who he probably didn't want to throw under the bus probably saw me, right? And they probably called him, and he came down. He lived close by, so I got sent home, and I continued this big run, and I kept on drinking, and I eventually I didn't want to put them through any problems. I remember I called from First Chance. I stayed there one night, and I said, "I'm in a facility. I don't know what I'm going to do." They didn't need me. I was it was too much of a liability and distraction. So I didn't even ask for my job back. I just kind of let that go, and I continued to work at Rustic House, and I was serving at Rustic House. Everything was going well. I cleaned up my act a little bit, And I got hired on at the Office Bar and Grill to work day shifts. And it's the same owners, and I was working with Jerry. Jerry's a great manager, great guy. I just saw him the other day. And so I snapped again one day. And I was leaving the Office Bar and Grill during the day, and I remember I got off and I had a drink. I had a drink somewhere. I had no license at the time. I was taking the bus still, so I took the bus, and I had the idea. I said, you know what? I know what I'll do. I'll get off at Safeway, and I'll pound some vanilla extract. That way they won't smell it on me, but it'll have the same effect as alcohol. So I pound the vanilla extract. I go into work, and like a tornado hit. I just I don't know exactly what happened, but I remember we had this chocolate IPA that tasted great. And I think I was doing the same thing. I think I was ordering them and pounding them in the back and then ringing them in on a fake table, so I was paying for them. And I remember we were having some type of transition. We were having a staff meeting, and I wasn't scheduled for the staff meeting, and I basically wasn't on the schedule, so I thought something was wrong. So I called my manager at the time, and I was terminated. And he didn't bring up anything that had to do with drinking, but I remember we had a couple talks about me watching too much sports, during this. Keep in mind, I'm used to a busy, fast-paced, big restaurant where I'm doing a lot of walking. So there's going to be periods of time where I'm waiting for food, and the big screen's right there, and I'm watching the game. That's just the way I love sports. So anyway, lost that job. Talked to Jerry. He asked about the drinking. I denied having a substance abuse problem. He told me he liked me, and that I'd be out the door if that happened at the office, and I made the agreement. And I hung on for about another month, and I remember I relapsed again. I was feeling sorry for myself, and I drank, and I remember I was like starting to detox. I thought I was losing blood because I was getting very fatigued. I felt like I was in a faint. So I hung on to the job throughout the end of the year, and I got hired at P.F. Chang's in Palo Alto. So then I converted to working nights at the office and daytime to P.F. Chang's. And I was working there, and it was very chaotic at P.F. Chang's. The to-goes for lunch were crazy with the whole DoorDash thing, and there was irate customers all the time, and I didn't feel very appreciated, not so much by the staff, but by the customers. They're pissed all the time. And, I was hanging on by a thread there, and I was still... I maintained some sobriety for a little bit, and again, my thinking was all screwed up. Over the years, I listened to a lot of Dr. Wayne Dyer's lectures, and he talks about the wisdom of Carlos Casteneda. Okay, he was from Peru, and he wrote many, many books. And Carlos Casteneda said, "We either make ourselves miserable or we make ourselves strong. The amount of work is the same." Now, this all has to do with the mental process and our thoughts. And I talk about this with new guys all the time who seek guidance from me. And I beat it into their heads. Again, character, conduct, thoughts, beliefs, all that stuff. Much like I've repeated over all these episodes. And I wasn't there. I was still suffering. So I remember right before I had gotten hired on at the Rustic House, I went on one last run. And during the run, earlier in the year, me and my buddy Lumber, Ken T, we made an agreement that we were going to go to the AC/DC concert at AT&T Park together, right? So I was just going through hell in 2015. I said, dude, I can't afford to go to this concert. I'm not behaving right. And I bailed on the concert with him. But what happened is that months later, like 6 months later, the concert's happening in September of 2015. And I went on this huge alcoholic run, and I wasn't staying home. And I remember I was staying at my friend Elizabeth's house in Redwood City. And in that experience, I could do a whole episode or two on, if any of you know me and Elizabeth, we're hanging out. Oh, my Lord. So I had her drop me off, I think, at the train station, and I took the last bit of my few dollars I had left. I bought the AC/DC ticket, floor seats, and I had a few pops with the little cash left I had, and I got into the concert, and I was like 20 feet from the stage, and I had a ball. I went nuts. When Dirty Deeds hit, and Rock or Bust, and Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, Thunderstruck was awesome, dude, with the lightning bolts on the big screen and the scoreboard at AT&T Park where center field is. It was the greatest concert I ever went to in my life, and I was just tearing it up. I mean, I was just banging my head and playing the air guitar. It was insanity. I had so much fun by myself. It reminds me of the early 2000s. If you want to see a one-man rock band in pure insanity right before your very eyes, all you had to do was have Dan Banchero with a DVD player and a television with an AC/DC live DVD, a large pepperoni and sausage with peppers and onions with extra cheese and extra sauce from Toto's Pizza right over here, a 40 bag of cocaine over here, all ready to go, and a 24 pack of Red, White, and Blues, or Budweiser to the layperson. And just, I could go all night. I'd watch it probably, I could watch it twice in a row if I wanted to. But multiple neighbor complaints just by myself. And I was having a great time in front of the TV, partying AC/DC live. It was nuts. So that's what it reminded me of. But thank God it's been about 13 years since I've done that. So, I was able to change my mind, and I went on this run. So what happened was, I leave the AC/DC concert, I get back on the train, and I'm going back to Redwood City to Elizabeth's house. Well, I pass out on the train, and I miss my stop. Keep in mind, I had no money to take an Uber or a cab, so I'm screwed. And I get back, I had my bus pass, like the average sophisticated, responsible 36-year-old man. I had my bus pass, and I got I got on the bus, and I was telling, and I wanted shelter. I didn't want to walk all the way from El Camino to Elizabeth's house, even when I got to the right place. I actually feared for my life. I went from the biggest high to the biggest low real fast, and I told the bus driver I need to get to a hospital. I wanted to check myself in the psychiatric unit. That's how serious I was, and I really did. It was like I'd been drinking for so long at that time. I didn't know if I was really suicidal or what. I didn't feel right. So I'm thinking the guys that dropped me off at Kaiser. I thought I was on the ECR. I was actually on like the 297, which goes like all night long. And I'm on Middlefield, and I didn't know it. So the guy drops me off. He says, "Here's the hospital." Well, he drops me off at the VA in Menlo Park. So here I come fumbling into the VA on the campus in the middle of the night. And I find some building, and I walk in, and there's like officers there waiting to greet me, and they're telling me that I'm basically trespassing. They're ready to arrest me for trespassing. And I just say, hey, look, I fear for my life. I'm in danger. I'm just trying to get to a hospital, get to a psychiatric unit. So they tell me, okay, well, we're going to call the cops. And so they call the police. The police come. I'm just like, oh man, just get me somewhere safe. I don't mean any harm. I didn't even know where I was at. So I'm fumbling all over the place. And the cops show up. They basically laid down and said, do you want to go to jail or do you want to go to the hospital? I'm like, oh, I want to go to the hospital, man. So they take me up to Chope. And I go in there, and I'm explaining my situation. I was hoping they would keep me for 3 days. I didn't even want to leave. So after further evaluation, after about 4 hours, they had enough. They said, this guy's not going to kill himself. This guy's just a drunk. Let's get him the fuck out of here. So I was asked to leave, and I did. And I was back on the bus and doing whatever I do. And somehow I made it back to work. And like I said, I started working again. And I got to change my mind. I did. I just didn't know what to do with myself. I was so tired of letting people down. Really, I mean, it's not. I sat here. I was an externalized person. I had external thinking still, and I was waiting for things to change, not realizing that everything comes from the inner. The inner causes the outer, and I couldn't pause enough to get that. I just thought it was like, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. I just don't know what I was expecting. You know, Buddha also said that every human being is the author of his own health or his own disease. So for me, you've heard me say in episodes that now it's like my purpose to have a good legacy. I want to have like a big funeral, as egotistical as that sounds. But that's a pretty good goal to have. I want to have an impact on people's lives for the better. So they're like, well, Dan, what do you mean by you want to make people feel better? Are you going to be like some codependent people pleaser, or what does that mean? And I got to thinking about it, and you know, what does it mean to me for people to feel better after they encounter me on a daily basis? Well, if they're in fear, you know, when they see me, do they fear less? Do they have less worry? You know, if they're pissed off after encountering me, do I calm them down? Am I able to give them some words or some kindness to change their demeanor so they're not as upset? They're more at peace, just a little bit than they were before they encountered me. Were they able to laugh a little bit? So if they're guilty of something or they feel ashamed about something, I expose myself and say, hey, check this out. Listen to what I did. And they laugh and we heal together. So they feel a little bit better than they did before they spoke to me. Those are examples. I'm not talking about people pleasing where, you know, let's say somebody asks my opinion on something, let's say at work, or something going on in the world. And then somebody else comes to me with an opposing opinion, and all of a sudden I'm changing my stance. So they accept me. That's people pleasing. People pleasing has been pointed at me many, many times. And I think it's just simple memetics. One idea passing through the mouths of others until it becomes a belief, because enough people say the same idea over and over and over again that there's no originality in it, and people just accept it to be a truth when it may or may not be a truth. Yes, there's been times where I've people pleased. There's times where I didn't feel like dealing with other people. I didn't want to explain myself. I couldn't accept that they were going to accept me, and I didn't know how to handle it like an adult. So I wouldn't change my stance, but I wouldn't necessarily state my opinion because I didn't want to deal with it. And I didn't want to deal with hassle. And sometimes there are people who are really, really sick in their minds, and they're very aggressive, and it's not worth, you know, having these discussions. And I won't get into further detail. I won't stick up for my opinion or my belief. It's just not worth my time. You know, am I flattering others with a motive? You know, is because I'm trying to have a better work environment with, you know, a worker who, you know, I feel is going to give me something that makes me more comfortable or make my job easier? Or am I just being kind in retaliation to an aggressive coworker? So my intent and my agendas play a big role in people pleasing. You know, if there's somebody down and out, am I genuinely trying to be of help and make them feel better? Or doing my part to give them some type of guidance that helped me? So it's a very gray area with this people pleasing thing, especially with a guy like me who's a little bit upbeat and likes to feel good. Because others, they don't, you know, take the time that I do, because for my own sake, because I know how crazy I am, to really get in-depth definition of my character. So it's a case-by-case basis. So I don't know, man. It just, people were on edge when I'd get to work because they didn't know what to expect. So now, how do people feel when I walk into a room? How do people feel when I come home? How do people feel when I walk into a meeting? What's my character like? Are they happy to see me? Or are like, oh, this fucking guy. So I gotta really watch my intent I know him a little bit too much. I know what kind of character I put out there on social media, and it can be very misleading. But the people that know me, who are in my close circle, I think they have a pretty good idea what's going on here. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to explain myself. People will go out there and just be who they are in a fashion where it's like, deal with it. This is who I am, and my words and actions don't, make a difference. It's a free country. All this crap, and when you're deliberately going out of your way to be aggressive or put yourself out there for people to just deal with, I mean, that's not an honest intent. So, so clearly, based on these 4 job experiences I had at the end of 2015, I was not enjoying life. And I was told that if I'm not enjoying the quality of life that I have, then it's likely that I'm a burden to somebody, at least somebody, or numerous people. In this case, for me, I was burdened to many people because I wasn't enjoying my quality of life. I was unsatisfied, but I was unable to change my character. And it's like I had the solutions right in front of my face, but I was choosing not to do those things. So I'm out here in Tahoe. I didn't always have choices to do this kind of stuff, man. It took me 9 years to get here. Last year was my first time in Tahoe, and all I had to do was character change. Because I wasn't successfully reacting to life, I couldn't make sound decisions, and I was constantly going to rehab. I was constantly homeless, constantly losing jobs, and sleeping on buses. Of course I couldn't. I didn't have a driver's license because I got that 4th DUI. So of course I couldn't make it to Tahoe. See, those are all like privileges. Some of these things we have in life are privileges. Even going to like Carl's Jr. for a burger and paying it for yourself is a privilege. If you were as destructive as I was with your addiction and kept on losing everything, I had to stop relying on people to provide for me. I had to start aligning my will with goodwill and successful choices in thought and action. Otherwise, my ass is going to be getting back in the food line at St. Anthony's and at Samaritan House for bag lunch, because that's what I deserve as a result of my actions. I don't deserve privileges. Getting money for hard work is a privilege. I took it for granted for many years, and I had to learn the hard way. So what attitudes and beliefs do I have in any given situation? That is what defines me. That's what will is to me. What is my willpower? Is it good? Is it aligned with goodwill? Is it aligned with God's will? Those things that we keep talking about these things in the recovery movement, because everything has to do with our thinking. We don't have a substance abuse problem. We have an externalized thought process. I relied on externals to change rather than looking within. Miracles are all around here in Lake Tahoe, between the lakes, the mountains, the trees. It's gorgeous. The rocks. For me, the miracle is in thought. It's a miracle that I've changed my thoughts, so I'm not reacting to life and causing those consequences anymore and affecting others the way I did. My mind has changed so much from where it is now compared to 2007 or even 2 years ago. I still had these little thoughts that were screwing me all up. And change is inescapable, but it should not be feared. So I want to go to Real Magic really quick here. It's on page 47. Real Magic is a book written by Dr. Wayne Dyer. I believe it was written in the 70s. Very powerful book. I got back into this. I read it about 12 or 13 years ago when I first got clean and sober. This is from the chapter Becoming a Spiritual Being. He says, "It is with the power of our minds that miracles originate, and therefore cause and effect are replaced by a belief in the effects that come out of what we call nothingness or emptiness. Our thoughts and beliefs are miracles unto themselves, and they are only tools for processing this physical world. If you need a cause-effect explanation, then you are unable to enter the world of real magic. The spiritual being is motivated by ethics, serenity, and a quality of life. The spiritual being knows that these external things flow into one's life in sufficient amounts, and they arrive as a result of living purposefully. One simply must know that there is much more to life than achievement, performance, and acquisitions, and that the measure of a life is not in what is accumulated, but rather in what is given to others. I want to read something out of the Golden Key too. This is by Emmett Fox, a little pamphlet here. I've used this a couple times this week to help out a couple of friends. And let's see which one I want to use. Okay, so there's people going through troubles. It's how we process our problems. Emmett Fox says this, but you must stop thinking of the trouble, whatever it is. The rule is to think about God, and if you are thinking about your difficulty, you are not thinking about God. To be continually glancing over your shoulder, as it were, in order to see how matters are progressing, it is fatal. Because that is thinking of the trouble, and you must think of God and of nothing else. Your object is to drive the thought of difficulty right out of your consciousness for a few moments at least, substituting for it the thought of God. This is the crux of the whole thing. If you can become so absorbed in this consideration of the spiritual world that you really forget for a while all about the trouble concerning you, which you began to pray, you will presently find that you are safely and comfortably out of your difficulty. That your demonstration is made. So, think about your conception of good, or if you believe in God, think of God, rather than thinking of the problem. I don't know, this modified way of thinking, habits and beliefs is working right now for me. I get to have a lot of fun. I get to do things I want to do. And I believe I'm affecting more people in a good way than I used to. I'm just a better man than I used to be. So that'll wrap up 2015. I'll get to a couple more terminations in employment as we get into 2016. And I'll get into my seventh and final stint in rehabilitation. So hope you enjoyed this episode of the Dan Banchero Show. And I will see you next time. Change your thoughts and you will change your life. Thanks for joining me.